All right. Hello, everybody. I think I'm live. Just give me 2 seconds to sort all this out because it's been a couple days and I'm not sure where everything is, and I'm a little bit behind schedule today. Came home to a bunch of updates on my computer, so give me 2 seconds to sort all this out. Okay, so it all looks like it's working good. Okay, so welcome again. Give me 2 seconds. Bring up my notes and we'll get going. Okay, just to let you know, this is a Monday stream. As you can tell, it's Monday. And the reason for that was I had to delay it by a day because I had a search and rescue conference that we have every year. And this was my second year, and it was amazing. And if you are in Western Canada and you're part of search and rescue, it's a fantastic thing to check out if you can. I won't go too much into that today because most of you don't give a crap, so that's fine. But let's see here. What do we got? Also, just on that note, I am on call today for search and rescue. So if at any time, sorry, let me just adjust this. If at any time I just randomly say I gotta go, it's because that phone's gonna ring with an emergency call and I've got to get going. So, just one of the unfortunate things about having to stream while on call, but it is what it is. So, with that said, thank you to all the new subscribers. I've got a couple on both Twitch and YouTube here, and it's fantastic. I really appreciate you guys tuning into this project and checking it out and being interested in it. It gives me a lot of motivation to keep going and find new information and make this the best I can. So awesome. Yeah. So last week I went over the episode 7 buckles, I believe, and I continued to work on them a little bit last week before I left, and it actually opened a bit of a can of worms that I wasn't expecting. It was really quite annoying in the sense that what happened was I was doing the episode 7 buckle and I was finishing off and doing all the different sides, for the patterns and all that. And I started looking at the other buckles just, to kind of get some reference and see where things are at. And I realized that I may have made quite a few pretty grave mistakes on the size of my buckles and the shape of my buckles. Now part of that is that I started to second guess myself from the last week's, or the last time I was working on it. Sorry, I'm not sure why I made some of the decisions I did all that time ago. So I started looking at it again and looking at all the photos and reference photos and stuff, and looking at what other people were kind of doing online, and I just thought, yeah, things just aren't right. There's just something about the shape and the size and all this that aren't right. So I spent the better part of last week just researching those, looking them over, and seeing if I can figure out what I was thinking and where I was going with that. And it turns out that I think I've probably made a few mistakes. And mistake maybe isn't the right word. I made some assumptions. And those assumptions were that the buckles themselves were the same or consistent among all the different holsters, and honestly that makes no sense because there's so many differences, as we'll see today, in all the holsters. Why would the buckles be the same? So those assumptions meant that I think what I had done was just sort of copied and pasted most of what was going on, or what I had, and just assumed that's just the same. One buckle is one buckle, they all fit. And that's not really the case. To give you a bit of an example, the more square buckle on the back of the A New Hope holster is, I think it's probably a lot wider than the one on the episode 5 holster. So I think they're probably different. But we'll get into that later on. Once I've kind of got that all figured out, I'm going to do another stream so you guys can see what I came up with and see why I think some of the patterns and stuff that you'll find online right now are just not correct. based on my observations. So that's going to take a bit of time because I got to go through, and I have very limited resource photos or reference photos for a lot of that stuff. So it's just going to take time, sort of doing cross references and checks and measurements and stuff. But for now, we'll leave that. This week, we're going to go over the episode 6 holster, and I call this one the Misfit. It's totally weird. It's different from all the other holsters in a lot of different ways. It looks very much like it started off one way and got altered in many different ways to, on the fly. And we're going to find out why. It is also not a very popular holster. For some reason, you don't see a lot of episode 6 holsters or just costumes in general. At least not in my experience. People tend to gravitate towards episode 4 and 5, but not so much 6. A little bit more 7, but it's really strange, and I'm not sure why. There's a lot of great like we're listening to the soothing sounds of Endor today, and there's some really great like a really great outfit on Endor, and I'm not sure why people don't do that more often. But that said, let's get into this and start looking at the differences between them all. Let me just move my notes over here so you guys don't have to away. Okay, so take a look here. So this is just a cool photo I found. I'm sure some of you have seen it before, but thought it was pretty sweet. So take a look at that for 1 second. But let's see what we got here. I'm going to try to get you guys a photo of the overall holster. I've got a bunch open here. I just have to find them. One of the things that is difficult about live streaming is that your screen real estate is real tough to deal with. You got all the software going. I got 2 screens, so I'm lucky, but I've got all the software on the one side and all these open things that you guys don't want to see or don't want you to see yet. And so I got to sort of figure this out. But anyway, let's bring this up. So here overall is the episode 6 holster. There's on first glance, there's not a lot different with it. It just doesn't, it looks the same. You got your buckles, you got your side pouches and greeblies, you got your pouch, all this kind of stuff. It all really kind of just looks the same. But when you get into the details of it, you start realizing pretty quick that this just isn't. There's a lot. So one of the first things I'll show you guys is, let's see where it's the best photo for it. Well, this might be it. This let's go with this one. The disc here on the side of the holster. Now I've talked about this before on the different forums and stuff, and it's probably this disc here. We're talking about this here. This disc. This disc is probably was probably what's, I guess, referred to as a bud buster, which is essentially what people use who smoke marijuana, I guess, use to grind up the bud or the leaves or whatever you call them. I don't know. I don't do that stuff, so I don't really know. I'm not an expert on that stuff, so if anybody else is, it would be great to get some information. On all the other holsters, it's definitely one with a bunch of holes. On episode 6, it's really strange because from some of these photos that you get, this does not look the same. There's nothing. This thing looks. It almost looks like little pins coming out of there. It almost looks like if you look at a bud buster, like when they're all the pieces are there, it sort of fits together, and there's these little sort of, I guess, chopper things inside, and when you kind of grind it, I guess those little pins or little things or whatever kind of chop up the bud. But it almost looks like on this holster that was part of it and it got broken off. Because if you look, you can see what looks like little pins. And there's a couple other photos that will come by probably when we're doing this sort of stuff. Oh, just hold on, let me just make sure my chats are up. Okay. That will come across, and you'll see a little bit more clearly that it looks like it was either broken off or it was a completely different disc. And that's one of the first things that people just take for granted. They throw on the disc of the same other ones, and I'm not necessarily sure it was the same. However, before I go on any further, I'm going to sort of do a bit of a disclaimer that I'm not entirely sure that all the holsters that we're going to be looking at today are, I guess, either screen used or legitimate. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of the photos reference that I have for the episode 6 holster are taken from other people that have sent them to me and off the internet. And that's sort of, you got to take that all with a bit of a grain of salt, right? Because, who knows? Who knows where they came from? Who knows if they're, fan creations or they're the real thing? I just don't know. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think they're all legit, so we can work forward from that. All right, so let's go and I'll see if I can find another photo here. Oh, fantastic. All over the place. All right, let's bring this one up here. You can see it a little bit more here, but not too much. I know I do have a find it. Just give me 2 seconds. Sorry, I had a bunch open and then I closed them all down because I couldn't see anything, so it's a bit of a pain. Wow. Okay, I'm not sure if I can find it here. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure we'll come across it, and if I do, I'll mention it a little bit more. But we'll move on. The other thing that you noticed is that the color of this holster is very different, and the way that it's created. The episode 4 and 5 holsters are generally pretty clean in terms of weathering. They didn't do a whole lot. There's some scratches and there's some creases and stuff that they kind of roughed it up a bit. But this one really is much more weathered than the other ones. And the color itself is quite different. If you look at this photo here, you can see that the leather is, it's not as cherry dark as some of the other holsters are. It's very light, and there's various photos I have of that where, see if I can get a close-up for you guys. It's a little bit more. You can sort of see here, like it's very light. It's more of a more tan colored, it seems, than the other ones. But in addition to that, it's also much more weathered. And it's not weathered like well, in my opinion. Like you can sort of see here around the pouches and stuff like this. It really just looks like they kind of almost did it with paint to try to weather it, or some sandpaper that was really kind of not well done. I mean, on screen you don't notice it, right? But on, in these sort of reference photos, you sort of see pretty quickly that it looks a little bit contrived or a little bit fake, but it's just something to keep in mind. Something also to keep in mind with this color is that on all these reference photos I have, it's very different, and that's just the reality of all these kinds of things. They're different from every angle, all the different but you can see that it is very weathered in a lot of different places, a lot of scuffs, a lot of scratches. a lot of kind of different colorations of sort of darks and lights, where they probably took some grease or something, or some, paint, grease paint, and just kind of like tried to muddy it up a bit, got more in the creases here and wiped it out. Standard classic weathering techniques to try to get this thing look like it's, doing something. So that something to keep in mind when you're doing yours is to, if you really want it to look authentic, to the screen accurate one, go in there and just get these weathered. And I've got these reference photos that I can put up if you need, and if you want to try to get it perfect. But just something to keep in mind. Let's see what's next here. And if also, just a side note here, if, like, as I say every single stream that I do now, it seems that if you guys are watching and there's any issues with the sound, music-wise or the microphone-wise, let me know. I think I've set everything up correctly now. I think I've got it pretty good. But if it starts to mess up or it doesn't sound right, just let me know in the chat. And actually, with that said, just give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to double-check. If it starts to mess up or it doesn't sound right, just let me know in the... Okay, good. It sounds good. Sorry, I'm real paranoid about it, because really nothing pisses me off more than doing an hour live stream and then going back and watching it and having the whole thing just be unusable, because what I'm going to do right now, I have to do it again. So, okay, so with that, one of the things that's kind of strange about this holster, and I'm not sure why it was like this. I'm going to make a bit of a guess. This holster has, on the episode 4 holster, there you'll see that there's this, what do you call it? I guess like a ridge. It's not a ridge. There's a technical or a leather term for it. Whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. There's this kind of this gutter here or whatever it is. Wow, I can't even think of the word. I wish you guys were in chat right now to correct me to tell me what this stupid thing is. Anyway. On the episode 4 one, this is on the holster part as well as the belt part. On episode 5, from what I can remember, and I can double check this in a second, that ridge is not on there. It's the... I'll show you. Just prove to you that it is. There you go. So you can see on the episode 5 one, there is no ridge, right? It's a very raw holster. There's not a lot of stuff going on there. It doesn't have those refinements. But on the episode 6 holster, it's very, very strange, because there is a ridge here, but there isn't one here. And I'm not sure why that is. Now, here's a guess, which is this bottom part was taken from one of the other holsters in one of the other movies. That could very well be the case. And it was just sort of put on there, which I'll get into that in a sec with the buckles. But this could have been remade, or they could have just mixed and matched the two. And who knows, right? But either way, I'm not sure why this was finished here and why this one was left raw. But if you're doing your holster, keep that in mind, that this is the way it is. And it's like that on all the reference photos. You can sort of see here, so there's the, there it is again, and it's not up here. It's a little thing. Most people don't even catch it. I see a lot of holsters from the different films that are done incorrectly with those ridges, but especially on this one, it's both. So it's a strange thing, something to keep in mind. Let's see here. Now, the hooks themselves are also quite strange on this, because they're very mismatched. You can see on this, let's get this up here. You can see on this photo here, you have this hook here. I'm going to call these hooks here. I'm going to, just for future reference, I've got, the way I name these are the hooks, these are the loops, and these are, I can't remember what I call them, but pivots, I think. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with names for these that make sense, that everybody can understand. This is obviously the buckle. But you can see that this shape here is very, very much like the episode 4 shape. It's got that really angular, it goes down to a very small a width here to allow for this loop, which allows for this to freely swing. The difference, however, between the episode 6 one here and the episode 4 one, and even the episode 5 one, is that this one's bent. So it's got a bit of a, you know, a kink here, right here, where it actually bends outwards instead of going flat like all the other ones. So that's one thing you'll notice on a lot of episode 6 holsters that people do. They just keep those buckles straight, and you know, they like all the other ones. And it, you know, why would you assume any different, right? It looks exactly like it would from the front, but there is a definite bend in here, and you can see it on other photos as well. So I'm not sure why they did that. It's really strange. I think they did it to try to clear the area a little bit from here and allow this to swing a bit more, but it seemed to work fine on the other ones. But so that's just what they did. However, what's strange about it is, and what's strange about this holster in general, let's see if I can get the open. What's strange about this holster in general is, sorry, actually that was a good photo. You can see even more. There's a definite bend there. It doesn't go straight. This is straight, and this one behind here is straight, but this one isn't. And I'm not sure if that was done on the fly on set or if it was done into the design, but something to keep in mind. Now, here you can see these two buckles are very, very different. A lot of people that sell them and a lot of people that create them do them the same. They just sort of look at one and copy it over and do two of the same ones. It is definitely not the same. And let's just quickly go into Illustrator here so you guys can take a look at the hooks here. These are the shapes of the two. So you have your left and your right. Just so you guys know how this pattern is working, is that this is the folded version. And this is the folded version here. This is the final configuration, I guess you could say. And this is the version that you would cut out of your pattern. And you can sort of see down at the bottom here how the two would be created, you know, if you were to bend them over. This one is a bit of a guess, but I just assume so. If the bend is bent at that angle and then it loops around, it's just naturally either going to be straight and you could unclip it, or it's going to be bent around and it would just simply be permanently attached where the other side wouldn't be. But that being said, you can see that the difference here between the two is very, very much very obvious. It's not even like they tried to create one side that looked like the other side in some, because this side curves, this side's straight. If they wanted to do the same, you know, they could have brought it far down and then brought it back up here. But it's not. It almost looks like they used two different buckles from two different holsters, because this shape and this shape you'll find this shape very close to be on the episode 4, whereas this shape is a little closer to episode 5, but not quite. So if we go back to this and take a look, you can see it curves around here. There's a big curve. It curves here, and then it kind of curves back out. And somewhere under here, it goes straight again. So this is a wide buckle, a little less than 2 inches wide. As you can sort of see here, it doesn't quite fit in the leather. This would be a 2-inch leather. Doesn't quite fit in there. So they're a little less than 2 inches. So I see a lot of people that are creating theirs at home, and they have these buckles go super wide, almost wider than the leather. That's just not accurate. So if you're cutting these out, make sure that they're less than the leather. I got cat hair right on my nose. Oh, never get a cat. Cats, I love cats, but man, trying to live stream with a cat hair in your nose is driving me nuts. Okay, so so these are just different. They're just different, and I'm not sure why. In addition to that, if you look, the rivets are the same, right? But kind of different. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, they're the same. and they are basically the same, but they look slightly different to me. Like this one looks a lot smaller, and it could just be differences in the rivets, but it could be that they were taken from two different holsters. Not sure why they did this like this. It just is how it is. So something to keep in mind when you're doing your holsters is, and like I say, the pattern I have here, you'll be able to use this and get, you know, an accurate version of this, because it's just, I've looked at these a lot of times, and I have a lot of different reference photos, like you can sort of see here. I've got lots of different angles where I was able to take them and tell what the difference was, you know, from the different perspectives and stuff. So I think these are pretty accurate in terms of, I'm going to call my pattern on these complete. But what is a little bit unknown to me is, let's see if I can find a photo here for you guys. Well, what's a little unknown to me is the shape of this. Now, this pivot buckle here, you can sort of see that it probably does. It goes up, and I'll bring up my illustrator so you can sort of see what I'm talking about before I kind of go off here. Oh yeah, they're up here. Okay, so I think I have these incorrect. Sorry about that. They're going to be more like this, I believe. This is the episode 5 pivot hooks, or loops, whatever I call them. I don't know why I got these all named different, but I'll get this sorted out, don't worry. It's a rounded, it sort of comes up a little higher than goes, you know, in this sort of angular shape. And I think it's probably very close there. You can sort of see how it goes up a bit. It's cut in. It looks rounded a little bit here, and it looks like it probably rounds in there. So I think those are probably pretty close to the other ones. There's a few more images where you can sort of see how that's probably the case as well. Looks like it kind of curves up here a bit. Probably attaches somewhere in there. It goes back down here, right? So let's see here. So yeah, those buckles themselves, just to sort of summarize, the buckles themselves are, or the hardware itself is very different in its makeup and stuff. So don't just go and take your episode 4 or 5 buckles and just recycle them if you want this accurate. It's just this not the same. And let's just look at one thing here, just so you kind of know. This is the episode 5 buckles, and they're just this one is straight. This one has this weird indent in it, so they are different as well, but they're not drastically as different as the other ones. The episode 4 buckles, not too sure. I'm looking at this one here. I think they're actually probably the same. So, with that being said, let's go back here. Now, this is probably a little bit obvious to some of you that know this holster well, but I will bring this up so you can check the difference out here. Let's put this in preview. Okay, let's get rid of this one for a sec. So I think you can see what I'm talking about here when it comes to the buckles. The buckles on this holster are the same, right? There's no rectangular buckle like on the other ones. They are they're just they're just exactly the same. They're the same buckles front and back. So it's a bit of a mistake some people make as well. They put the episode 4 buckle on the back and call it a day. It's definitely not that. It's the same buckle on the front and back. Very odd. Very different than the other two, which are either episode 4 has it's got this buckle on the front and this rectangular buckle on the back, Episode 5 has the rectangular on the front and this one on the back. This one, for some reason, has both. So keep that in mind when you're doing that as well. Let's see. The Greeblies. I'm not going to go too much into the Greeblies because it's sort of its own separate thing. But the Greeblies themselves are... Let's see if I can get another picture for you. They're at 5 minutes here. That's the one I got. The Greeblies themselves are very odd in the sense that I have no idea what they are. This is like a thing. This is a thing. I don't know. This looks... a buddy of mine who is an expert at firearms says that this possibly could be a shell of some kind, or what he thinks might have happened is 2 shells may have been put together, but it could be anything, right? It could be just a pipe, it could be some sort of fitting, it could be a casing for something. No idea what it is. Nobody, I think, knows what they are. These as well, they look like they could have been from like buckles or something. I don't know what they do in here. If you look at one of the people online who are offering these as Greeblies, they've kind of just mirrored them. It's been symmetrical to top and bottom. They claim that they have seen, the Lucas Archive stuff. I can't say one way or the other if that's true, but that's what they claim, and they have the top and bottom the same. I'm not sure if that's the case. And then this thing, likely this is from a model kit. Like with the episode 5 holster, where that was a carburetor piece, this is probably some sort of piece out of some model kit, yet to be identified by anybody. It's just, who knows what it is. The thing is about this, though, is that this holster here has all the pouches full. Episode 4 has just the 2 white, whatever those things are, those boxes, and the sparkless canister. The episode 5 has the carburetor, and then the plug or whatever that is, and then I don't think anything else. Double check that though, just so I'm not... Should know that holster, like, but anything else, I don't think there's anything else in there. Yeah, it's just these two pouches over here are just not, they have nothing in them. So that's the one sort of thing that's a little bit unique to this specific holster, is that all the pouches are full of something. Let's see what's next on. The holster. How do I put this? The thigh piece on this holster looks odd. It looks like it's very, very long, and I'm not sure why. Even if you look at, if you look at the screen capture from Jedi, you can see that this falls really low on his thigh comparatively, in my opinion, to the other ones. And part of that is this holster itself sits really low on Harrison Ford here, and we'll get into that in a second about why that may be the case. But even when he's standing up straight and it's kind of a little bit lower on his hips, you can sort of see that this seems to go down pretty far. I don't think it's a big difference, but I think it's enough of a difference that this holster looks on Harrison Ford and on many of the mannequins. It looks long, so something to keep in mind. I'm not going to go into it too much because I'm not completely convinced of it. It could just be an illusion based on various things, but. What do we got here? Now here is something that that's been brought up before. I noticed it in a couple of scenes, and I sort of said something on the RPF, and I was like, anybody else catch this? There's a user on the Rebel Legion, goes by the name of Hugs121, and they said that, or they claim that they heard the story. It's not a claim, but they heard the story that because Harrison Ford was bulking up for Temple of Doom around that time of Jedi, that the belt didn't fit correctly or the holster didn't fit, so they had to adjust it on set. And that, it's not an unreasonable story. But if we take a look here, on this here, now you can see that there is something funky going on. And this is from the scene where he's talking to Lando. And you can see here that this little bit here on the back has a cut, a taper or whatever, and you can see it much more easily on this one. In fact, you can see because on all the other holsters, except for Episode 7, I think, there's the 6 buttons here and the 6 buttons here. This button on some of the other ones are a little bit difficult to see because sometimes they're covered by the buckle. But on this one, there's definitely just isn't. There's 4, right? And there's 4 and it tapers down. So what Hugs was, alluding to was that they had to make this holster larger for his extra, muscle or bulk within his hips here. What's strange about that, and the only question I have about that is, if that is in fact the case, why are these buttons gone? Why would that be the case? If this curves around, if this leather curves around and buttons onto one of these buttons, and they had to extend it a little bit, the buttons would likely either be moved or still be there, and they would have found some other way to attach it. So it's very strange to me why there's a set of buttons that are missing. But this is one of the weirdest things about this holster is this taper here. Why it's like that? Why it's like that on only one side, and why are these buttons missing? And you can see it down here as well. Buttons are missing. There's a taper here for some reason. Now, here's a theory that I have, Hugs, so you can tell me what you think about this, because you are building this holster right now. My theory is that the reason that that's tapered is because that buckle is pulled off another holster. And here's what I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you look at this holster or this buckle here, this is the back. 2-inch, hooks or loops here. But on the front, in order to have this thing swing freely, this sort of pivot thing, this one had to be shorter. And I think what may have happened was that because this one is shorter, now if it makes any sense at all, and I think if it turns the right way, this could be a totally crackpot theory, but if this one was shorter to allow this to pivot, that may account for why that's thinner, right? They had to just simply thin the leather to get it to fit around within there. And perhaps because they had buttons on there already, they had to remove them. They're just like, I got to get rid of them because we can't get this stupid leather thing around there that's already welded or soldered in there or whatever they did. So that could be another theory as to why that was the case, is that this was a recycled belt and they had to basically make it fit on the back. Why they would do that, no idea. But could be what it is. That could be part of why that is. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind, and I'll show you on when I give you guys the pattern. Before I show you this, though, I'm kind of a bit going over. There's this photo, which is very odd. I'll just let you guys kind of look at this for a sec. Right? Very odd. I'm not sure where this holster's from. Now I'll go into this. There's something else on this that I want to go into in a bit, but it's very odd. Look, like it's chopped here. It's chopped and tapered here. This here is complete. I don't know what this holster is. I don't know where this holster is from. I don't even know if this is from the movie. It could just be someone's random holster that they created. But there is aspects of it that show, the buttons being, I don't know. It's just something to look at. But let's leave that one for a sec because I want to show you something else, which is here. This is the back of a Jedi Episode 6 holster, and it's totally fine, right? 6 buttons, no problem. There's your line, there's your, it doesn't have a line there. It's definitely an Episode 6 holster. No idea why it doesn't look like this other one, right? Like, what is this? It's totally different. So either there was a couple made. This one, for some reason, just didn't see the screen, or it was, this was modified in different parts of shooting. I have no idea what was going on here. So there's definitely not that taper in the leather, and there's definitely the buttons are there. So which one is accurate? I don't know. I have no idea. One of them, both of them. So what I've done is in the pattern, I'll show you guys this. And that was fantastic. Okay, let's go out here. In the pattern here, I've got both. This, you have the droid collar here. You've got, and this is just a standard 2-inch wide belt that will loop around. You've got your 6 buttons, and you're good to go. However, I've created this second one here for anybody who wants to follow that other sort of accurate thing with the taper and the buttons that come back and snap onto here. It's the best I can do for you guys, because I don't know which one is which. I don't know which one is accurate. They both seem to be accurate, other than the fact that one is definitely in the movie. That one is in the movie in this scene. But what this may be is, if you go, I'm part of I also collect Indiana Jones gear, and some of you guys might see, back behind me right here, there's some whips and things like that, some bull whips. I collect Indiana Jones gear as well. And one of the things that is in that community that people really like to do is, when they created the hats for all the different movies, they created many of them. Like there was, I think, for Crystal Skull, I think they did 30. I think Steve Delk did 30 of them, something like that. And each one has a different, like shape depending on the scene because of shooting or whatever. So people will say, "Oh, I want the Cairo version," or "I want the Temple of Doom." Raven, or Raven Bar version. There's no Raven Bar in the Temple of Doom. You know what I'm saying? The Thuggy Temple version, or one of those different scenes. And so when I ordered mine from Steve Delk, I said I want the the Cairo version, where it's a little bit more floppy and a little bit more crazy. And then I wanted the Venice Pier scene from when he gets off in Last Crusade. Those are the two that I wanted. And so this could be very much like that, where when you're referring to the Episode 6 holster, you kind of say, well, we're talking about, I want the holster from this scene or this scene. And those on the Rebel Legion that are in charge of approving the different costumes, my advice to you guys is to write this into your sort of policy to allow for both, because there's really no reason to say that it's not accurate. Both of them just are there in the movie, I think, and they're both legitimate. So something to keep in mind. And all right, so I'm gonna just check my chat. Nobody's chat. That's okay. So I've already talked about the buttons being missing. So 4 buttons. It's very odd. The distance between here and here are obvious that was the first set of buttons and they're gone. Now I'm going to go back to this other photo because this is a very strange one as well. Find it. Where did I put it? Actually, this is, before I move on, this might be something. Yeah, I don't know. it's very weird to me. I mean, this one, this is the Endor bunker, and I don't see that same taper there. It looks like the tube. You can almost see a little, like if you just look right where my cursor is now, there looks like a little pixel of what could be the button, right? So who knows what's going on? There's probably a couple of versions, and maybe somebody go and watch this movie and maybe tell me if Harrison Ford's body type changes throughout the movie. I never noticed it because I never even thought to look at it, but it could be something, you know. But where are we here? Right. Okay. So let's get rid of this one because I really want to focus on this for a sec. I don't know what this holster is. And like I said before, this may not even be legitimate. But I want to mention it because there are aspects of it that look legitimate. But this buckle here is really weird. I don't know what this is all about. I don't know why this is cut like this, or if it's broken, or if when they created this, if it was. I can't see this on any other version. If you look at the back of even this one here, it isn't like that. So I don't know what this holster is, but it's just something that's very curious to me. If this is some fan-made one, then we can just throw it out. But that's an odd thing, so I don't know what that's all about. I'm not opening that one ever again because it's opening a can of worms. So, okay. We're getting pretty close to the different end of the differences. There is one. Let's see, what do we got here? That you guys can look at that for a second. Just look at the back here while I find this last one. All look the same when they're in thumbnail. Okay. Nope. Sorry about this. I'll find it momentarily. Okay, good. This is one. Just one final, and it's just a small detail that you can do if you're really looking for accuracy is these buttons here on this leg part here this last button here is very close to the edge of this. On the other ones, the button is there, and then there's this piece of leather that kind of goes out a little bit as more of a handle. This is not the same, so it is a little bit here, but not so much on here. It goes almost right to the edge. So just keep that in mind that it doesn't go as far. It's just a really small detail, but other than that, everything else is sort of the same. The placing of this pouch or these pouches is roughly the same. There might be a little bit more room in here than some of the other ones, but it's roughly the same. Droid collar, from what I could tell, looks exactly the same. There's no difference. I'm going to look into it further though, just to be sure. But that is basically the differences in this holster. Some are subtle, some aren't so subtle, some are very mysterious, but all in all, it's there are differences, and it's probably the most different and the most of a mishmash from the other two holsters than the other three. So if you're creating this holster, for example, Hugs, you've got a bit of a challenge, and I think you'll have to decide whether you want to go for a more idealized version, like some of the photos I showed, or if you want to go for more of the screen version in some of these different scenes, like Endor here, talking to Lando here. You'll have to make that decision, how accurate or whatever you want to go, or which direction you want to go with it. I'll give you in the pattern both options. and I'll label them clearly so you can just decide which ones you want. So yeah, so that's that with that holster. I think that probably covers most of it. Let's go on for a second. I'm just gonna bring up Illustrator, excuse me, and zoom out a bit, and just sort of for everybody now, let you know where I'm at with this. I've spent a lot of time cleaning up this this file. Before I had created them all in different spots, you can sort of see on one of the forums they were all kind of. I've started to organize them now and bring them all and into these rows so I can separate and make sure I have every single piece that needs to be done and that it's correct. And unfortunately, it's opened a bit of a can of worms in terms of, I think what was happening. I'll be honest with you guys. I think what was happening when I was creating this before is that I was trying so hard to do this so quickly that that I started making assumptions. I was under pressure from the forums to, produce and get this thing out as quick as possible. So I started to say, well, these pouches are going to be the same as these pouches, and these are probably, the same as these, and I think it's come back to bite me in the ass all these months later, because I was looking at a lot of them this last 2 weeks, and I think there's a lot of mistakes. There are too many parts that I just said, that I looked at again and said, that's just not correct. And I'm not going to say, good enough. I mean, my wife and I were talking about this project a little bit, and she sort of said, nobody's gonna know, nobody's gonna notice and stuff. And I said to her, like, the analogy. This is gonna be weird, but what I told her was, I watched this documentary on Netflix about this guy who held the world record for, I think it was Donkey Kong or some other game. What do you call those? Not consoles, but oh. Jeez. Some other video game. And what ended up happening was he held that record for a long time, and then somebody came along and saw, well, they could do a little bit better, and they beat his record, and then he tried to go back and beat it, and he just couldn't. He was too old, and he just couldn't. He didn't have the stamina to do it anymore, and he kind of lost that record. Now, I'm not saying that I'm doing this for the fame and the glory, but what I'm trying to say is, and what I explained to her was that I would like to be known as the person who did like the most amazing patterns for these ever created, and I would like to hold that, I guess, that that title for a while. And it seems really stupid. Maybe people are out there like, what an asshole. But like, honestly, I would like to be known for that, because if I'm going to put in this amount of work, it would be cool that not only is it accurate, so all you people can make sweet, accurate holsters, but that somebody doesn't come along next week and say, well, here's all your mistakes that you made, and I've made a better version, and now you're an idiot. So I know that seems really stupid and kind of selfish, but the reality is that I want to make this pattern awesome for all you guys, myself included. I don't want to cut corners. And so sitting there and saying, it's good enough, and just releasing it not only opens it for somebody else coming along and doing it much better, which then I can't do anything about, but it also is disingenuous to you guys. So there's a bit of selfishness there, and and to be honest, and there's a lot of it too, is I just want to be the best. So I'm going to go back to this and really research a lot of this stuff from the top, the top left here to the bottom, right here. And I'm going to look at every piece again. I'm not going to start from square one, obviously, but I'm going to look at every piece and say, have I done the best job? Have I been able to answer those questions to the best of my ability? And I think what I'm going to do moving forward is that if like, for example, I know how the episode 4 buckles were created. I have photos that are just, there's no denying how those were created. But I don't know how necessarily they were created on the episode 6 buckles. And I made the assumption here that, no, they're probably the same. However, I'm not sure that that's true. So I'm going to go back and just look and make sure that I can, as best I can. And if I can't get that in the pattern, what I'll do is I'll make notes on there in red or whatever, so you guys know that this just isn't, I don't know. I can't answer the question. Anyway, I'm rambling about it. But you get what I'm saying. I'm going to do my best, and if I can't get the answers, I'm going to be honest with you guys and say I just don't have the answers here. This is a guess by me based on, this information and stuff. It's a best guess. It's not just a random guess, but it's best guess, and you'll have to make those choices. So, yeah, so this is where things are at. I've got a lot of things that are coming together. There's a few things I need to figure out. So with that said, next week I have there's a thing here called the Swiftsure sailboat race in it. And with search and rescue, we tend to put a couple vessels out there to help monitor it and just patrol it, make sure everything's safe. I'm not sure what my shifts are for that yet. So if it is Sunday, then I'm going to have to reschedule. If it's just Saturday and that, then there's no problem. I'll be back here on Sunday as per usual. And then next week, I'm going to be talking about, for the first half of the stream, I'm going to be talking about common inaccuracies that I see with holsters out there. Now, I'm not doing this to slam anybody's holster. I'm not doing this because I want, to point out anybody specifically and say, you suck at this and, you should have done better. I'm doing it because as I've done a lot of research, I come across a lot of fan-made ones. And I think that it would be worth it to anybody building theirs going forward to be aware of some of the common inaccuracies that I find people tend to do. And it's not any mistake of theirs. I mean, obviously people don't have the time to sit down and create patterns of their own that are this detailed because this takes, a ton of effort and stuff to do. So I can't fault anybody for not doing that. But people tend to make these sort of same inaccuracies on all their holsters, and I just want to address some of those. So when you're building yours, if you don't have these patterns, that you kind of keep them in mind and say, okay, I've got to make sure that I watch out for that. And then in the second half of that stream, I'm going to talk about the holsters themselves, just what the differences are. As many of you do know, the Denix replica for the Mauser firearm is a lot different than a genuine Mauser. I have access to both, and I may do a pattern for both of them if you have a genuine one, because if you have a Denix and you create one for an accurate one for Han Solo's. Just a second. All right, we lost our. Just give me 2 seconds here. I'll restart this. All right, sorry about that. Just want to restart the music and get oriented here. Yeah, okay. So where was I? Yeah, so the Denix is different, and if you create an accurate version with the Denix, nobody's Denix is going to fit in their holster, and everybody's going to be mad. Whereas if you have a Denix and you go, an actual genuine Mauser, and you go and try to put it in the holster, it's going to be wobbling around in there and stuff as well. So, I'm probably going to try to create both for you guys. I only have access to the genuine Mauser for a short period of time, just long enough I'm hoping to make some molds of it. But in order to do so, it's very difficult, and here's why. The maybe we'll talk about that next week. Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. Just because I think it's a bit of a story that you guys might find interesting, but I don't want to take up too much of your time today. But yeah, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why the Denix and the Mauser are different and how to deal with that with this holster and the patterns, and in terms of screen accuracy, how that goes. And then yeah, that'll be next week's. So I think with that said, I've sort of gone through my list here today. And this stream was probably a little bit more seemed a little bit more last minute. It was. I got home very late last night from search and rescue, and I got up this morning and I had to try to put together a bunch of this stuff. And so I was I was looking at the time. I'm like, oh, it's 2:45. I got to get everything together. So hopefully it made sense to you guys, and I didn't ramble on too much. But next week, hopefully I'll see you guys here, and I thank everyone for tuning in and watching, and now or later. And I'll see you next week. Okay, see ya.